In this session, we are going to explore globalisation. To do that, we are going to think about what globalisation actually is, then think about how that impacts on managerial practice, and then reflect on how management can be effective in a global context. Before we get started, pause and note down in your own words what you think globalisation is. Boundaries and barriers have been reduced. Globalisation can be considered the world becoming a single place. However, becoming is the key word here. It is moving that way, but not yet fully achieved. As the world has become smaller and more connected, there has been an increasing consciousness of the world as a whole. So how events in one country can impact events in others. One of the most prominent recent examples of this is the global financial crash of 2007-2008. It started with American mortgages and then rippled over the Atlantic and hit Europe. There are also cultural influences. This is mostly thought to be Western cultures influencing Eastern societies, but there are Eastern influences on Western contexts. Japanese management techniques have been attractive to Western companies for some time now. There is also greater cooperation internationally. There are a number of international organisations and agreements which aim to provide standardised rights and responsibilities to various countries. We have the United Nations and the World Trade Organisation and the International Monetary Fund, to name a few. So now we have an idea of what globalisation actually looks like. Pause for a minute and think about your organisation. How has or does globalisation impact on your organisation? So why do organisations choose to expand from their home country and operate internationally? Chandler suggests there are 3 reasons for this. Firstly, economies of scale. These are when production becomes more cost efficient when they produce in high levels. This then requires larger sales in larger or numerous countries. Then there are economies of scope. These are the efficiencies of variety of product rather than number. So you produce different but similar products and this reduces costs. And finally, there is cost of resources. This is the access to cheaper resources organisations get when they operate internationally. An example of this might be low-wage economies. Not all organisations that are globalised do the same thing or act the same way. Bartlett and Goshaw identified 4 categories of globalised organisations according to the way they operate. First, there is a global firm. This type of organisation offers standardised products across all the countries they operate in. Think Coca-Cola. You get the same product no matter where you are. The multi-domestic company is more focused on meeting local consumer demands. Nestle is a company which alters its products according to local tastes. The transnational has the characteristics of both the global and the multi-domestic organisation. So for example, Unilever, they have the same products that they sell internationally, but the sales and marketing is adjusted to the local environment. Then finally, we have the international firm, which does not respond to local markets. It focuses on their domestic market where decisions are made. There is little adaptation. So think UPS or DHL. There are many managerial considerations when moving into new markets and new countries. These can include legal, strategic, structural or cultural considerations. Pause for a minute and think about how these might transpire. Note these down. Also consider what the impact might be on your role. There are a number of managerial issues that might transpire when a company decides to go global. One of these is legal considerations. These are numerous and might include tax, consumer rights, employment rights, health and safety legislation, and reporting duties. The strategy might have to change as the company goes global. When you enter new markets, you might have new competitors to consider. The costs involved in getting established in a new country might also impact on the strategy of the organisation. as could local tastes and preferences. Tesco, one of the big four supermarkets in the UK, failed to establish itself in the US, partially because its branding was off. The structure of the organisation might also change as the company internationalises. A new department might have to be established which deals with the international activities. This is a managerial decision, how to best restructure the organisation to manage international operations. Then finally, there are cultural considerations. Acceptable behaviours, values and attitudes will vary across different cultures. If managers are to effectively manage people, they need to understand the culture and adjust to accommodate it. Hofstede identified 6 cultural dimensions which represent the cultural preferences of different nation states. These cultural dimensions are power distance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, and long-term versus short-term orientation. So firstly, power distance. This is about the degree to which society accepts inequality in power. High power distance societies accept inequalities such as tall hierarchies, whereas low power distance societies prefer a distribution of power. Individualism is about the societal preference to take care of themselves and their immediate families, whereas collectivism is where there is a preference in society to a tight-knit societal framework where we all take care of each other. Masculinity versus femininity is about the types of behaviours that have greater value. The masculine values and behaviours include achievement, assertiveness, and material reward, whereas the feminine values and behaviours include cooperation, modesty, and quality of life. It is important to note here that either gender can enact these behaviours. Uncertainty avoidance is about how comfortable people are with uncertainty. High uncertainty avoidance countries avoid ambiguity and are more rigid in their behaviours. Low uncertainty avoidance countries are more comfortable with the unknown and may be more likely to embrace risk. Long-term versus short-term orientation is about the outlook of these societies and their approach to planning. So an example of this is Germany versus the US. Germany is more inclined towards long-term planning, whereas the US is more short-term in its outlook. Pause for a minute and think about some of the implications of this for managerial practice. Now let's think about some of the managerial practices we identified in earlier sessions and how these might have to be adapted if you were to move to another country to work. Go to hofstedeinsight.com and choose a different country to yours and reflect on how you might have to adjust to your practice. So hopefully that's given you an insight into globalisation and how it has impacted on organisations and managerial practice. You don't need to move out with your home country to be impacted by globalisation. It is something that affects all businesses in a variety of ways, from the products we have to the people we work with. Now we're going to think about new markets. To do that, we are first going to think about some new international markets and discuss some of the opportunities presented by these markets. Then we will think about creating new markets in the countries in which we already operate. And then we're going to think about some of the practices of management when they are entering new markets. So let's start with thinking about some of the new markets which have been growing internationally. Traditionally, the growth and expansion of markets has occurred within Western contexts and industrialised nations. But there has been a shift in recent years, and we are now seeing significant growth in developing economies who are becoming major players in the world's economy. These are the BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The expansion of these economies presents some opportunities and threats to Western economies. The BRICS nations have risen over the last 30 years. It was formerly BRIC, but now South Africa has been included. These countries account for approximately 40% of the world population. They also account for 23% of the world domestic product, and this could grow to 47% by 2050. Now pause for a minute and think about the potential consequences of this to Western businesses. These national economies are considered to have grown over the last 30 years through trade and financial liberalisation. Also, they recovered faster from the global financial crash of 2007 and 2008. Unlike Western countries, which are quite similar and geographically close, BRICS nations are quite different in terms of geography and national structures and institutions. So whilst they are discussed as a collective, they are different. So for example, the Chinese and Indian economies are based on export activities, whereas Brazil and Russia are based on natural resources. So what opportunities do these BRICS countries present? First, they have increasing populations, and as the economies grow, more of these people are accumulating higher disposable incomes. That means growing customer markets and people who might buy the goods or services of Western companies. There is also an increasing opportunity for foreign investment. Companies can invest in local businesses and generate profits from them. There is also an increasing potential workforce. By 2050, it is projected that 97% of the global workforce will come from these countries. They have faster rates of population growth. Therefore, there is more potential talent and skills available to businesses. So let's pause for a minute and think about what that means for Western organisations, and in particular your organisation. Can they benefit from the rise of BRICS countries, or are there potential threats? So we've considered the opportunities that are available from entering new countries, but new countries are not the only new markets available. Pause for a minute and think about what new markets or opportunities could be available to your organisation without moving location. New markets and opportunities can be created through entrepreneurial activities. Entrepreneurship is a huge research area with many different perspectives of what it is. A prominent theorist is Schumpeter, who said, "Entrepreneurship essentially consists in doing things that are not generally done in the ordinary course of business routine." So it's about doing things differently or creating something new. New opportunities can be created within existing organisations. This can include creating or entering new markets, but this is a process that needs to be supported by managers, and managers need to be committed to it. When entrepreneurship occurs within an organisation, it can be termed intrapreneurship. Entrepreneurship can be fostered by managers either through their own actions or by supporting the entrepreneurial activity of others. This includes giving employees some autonomy and space to explore new opportunities, providing them with access to company resources such as time, people and finances. There is a risk if managers don't embrace entrepreneurship and support employees in entrepreneurial activities. They might lose talent as people leave to pursue new opportunities on their own. This then leaves the organisation with only employees who are not innovative. This is termed the dead wood syndrome and can lead to a loss of competitive advantage when companies are not innovating and evolving. So what do managers need to do to engage in entrepreneurial activities and find these new opportunities? Miller identified 3 entrepreneurial opportunity processes: opportunity recognition, opportunity discovery, and opportunity creation. Opportunity recognition is about matching supply and demand, so recognising a want or need of your customers and then providing that. This requires managers to use the information they have that others might not to exploit an opportunity. Opportunity discovery is about identifying undiscovered opportunities in the market. So they're already there, but no one has spotted them yet. This requires managers to be alert to what is happening in the market and using their knowledge and experience to spot these. Opportunity creation is about creating new markets through developing a product or service that does not already exist. This requires innovation and risk-taking attributes. These processes don't need to be enacted by the manager. They can, but it's not critical as them. But they do need to support the entrepreneur within the organisation as they find new opportunities. Have a think, are there opportunities available to your organisation? And if so, what process do you think you use to identify it? So hopefully you have a better understanding of where new markets can be found and that it requires actions by managers. This can be moving into different countries, or it can be finding or creating new markets in the country you already operate in. The key is commitment from managers to pursuing them.